The strange question the market street was full of noise that evening. Humans and aliens moved side by side, trading food, metals, and rare crystals. Lights from the shops flickered, and the air smelled of dust and smoke from nearby ships. In the middle of this crowd stood a small alien girl. Her skin glowed faint blue under the neon lamps, and her big silver eyes searched every face that passed. She was tiny, no more than 7 or 8 years old in human measure. Dressed in a torn cloth that hardly covered her thin frame, she held out her small hand to a man passing by and asked in a soft, trembling voice, "Are you my daddy?" The man laughed nervously, shook his head, and walked away without a second look. The girl did not stop. She stepped toward the next human, tugging at his coat. "Are you my daddy?" she asked again. This man frowned, pulled his coat free, and muttered that she should go back to her people. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving the child behind. Many people noticed her, but most ignored her. Some smiled, thinking she was only playing a game. Others looked at her with suspicion. No one stopped to listen. But one man did. His name was John, a human traveler who had just arrived from the outer colonies. John had come to this town for supplies. He wanted to buy food and parts for his small ship. But the sight of the alien girl caught his attention. Something about her voice, fragile and desperate, made his heart tighten. He paused near a stall and watched her. The girl moved to another human, a tall woman carrying a bag of tools. She asked the same question, "Are you my daddy?" The woman looked confused, shook her head, and walked quickly away. John frowned. The girl repeated the same words to every human she saw. Her face carried a mix of hope and sadness, as if she truly believed one of them would finally say yes. Curiosity pulled John closer. He had seen strange things in his travels, but this was different. The girl looked weak. Her steps were slow, and her voice trembled each time she spoke. He noticed bruises on her arms and dirt on her legs, as though she had been wandering alone for days. John approached carefully, not wanting to frighten her. She turned to him before he could speak. Her silver eyes looked straight into his. "Are you my daddy?" she asked again. For a moment John did not answer. The words hit him harder than he expected. He looked around, hoping someone else would step forward. But no one did. People only shook their heads or kept walking. John knelt down so his eyes were level with hers. "Why are you asking that, little one?" he said gently. The girl blinked, her lips trembling. "My mother told me Daddy would come from the stars," she whispered. She said, "He is human," she said. "Find him." John felt a chill run down his spine. Was she lost? Or abandoned? Her fragile voice carried too much pain to be just a child's game. He wanted to ask more, but suddenly, strong winds swept across the street. A storm was rolling in. Dust blew into the market, and merchants rushed to cover their goods. People hurried toward shelter. The girl wrapped her thin arms around herself, shivering in the rising wind. She looked around in fear, but no one reached for her hand. She stood alone in the crowd, whispering her question again to no one in particular. John's heart ached. He could not just leave her there. "Come with me," he said firmly. He reached out his hand. The girl hesitated, but finally took it, her small fingers cold against his palm. Together, they moved quickly through the busy street. John guided her toward his small cabin at the edge of town. The storm was growing stronger, the sky dark with sand and smoke. By the time they reached his door, the child was coughing and shaking. Inside, John lit a small lamp. The glow filled the single room. He sat the girl near the fire and wrapped an old blanket around her shoulders. She held it tightly, as if afraid it would disappear. For a while, neither spoke. The sound of the storm outside filled the silence. Then the girl looked up at him again. Her silver eyes reflected the flame. "Are you my daddy?" she whispered once more. John could not answer. His chest felt heavy, his mind filled with questions. Who was she? Why did she believe her father was human? And why did she seem to carry such deep sadness? Outside, the storm howled, but inside, John realized something. This was no ordinary meeting. This was the beginning of something bigger, something dangerous, something that would change his life forever. And as the girl curled against the blanket, waiting for his reply, John knew one thing for certain: he could not walk away. A desperate search. The storm raged through the night. Sand whipped against the cabin walls, howling like angry voices outside. Inside, John sat on the wooden chair, staring at the small alien girl curled up on his old blanket. She had fallen asleep near the fire, her little chest rising and falling in soft breaths. Even in sleep, her face carried fear. Her tiny hands gripped the blanket tightly, as if letting go would mean losing everything. John rubbed his tired eyes. He could not forget her words. "Are you my daddy?" They echoed again and again in his head. Why would her mother tell her such a thing? And why was she searching for a human father in a town where no one cared to even look at her? When morning light broke through the dusty windows, the storm was gone. The market would soon wake, and the streets would be busy again. John poured some water into a cup and placed it near the girl. She woke slowly, blinking her silver eyes. For a moment she looked confused, then afraid, as if expecting him to throw her out. "You're safe," John said softly. "Drink this." She obeyed, sipping the water quickly. Hunger showed in her trembling hands. John gave her a piece of bread, and she ate it as though she had not eaten in days. "What's your name?" John asked. The girl looked down, her voice quiet. "Lena," she whispered. "Lena," John repeated, letting the name settle on his tongue. "Why are you here alone, Lena? Where is your family?" Tears welled in her eyes. "My mother. She was hurt. She told me to run. She told me to find my daddy." Her small body shook as she remembered. She said, "Daddy will come from the stars, and he will protect me." She said he is human. John leaned back, his heart pounding. The story sounded impossible, but her pain was real. He wondered if her mother had spoken in riddles, or if she truly believed a human was the girl's father. "Do you know who he is?" John asked carefully. Lena shook her head. "No, but I will find him. I must." The determination in her tiny voice surprised John. She was fragile, but inside her lived a strong will. Later, John walked with her through the town. The sun was high, and the streets were busy again. Traders shouted prices, children ran between stalls, and guards marched lazily down the road. Yet Lena's focus stayed on one thing. She moved from person to person, tugging their sleeves, asking the same question. "Are you my daddy?" Most people ignored her. Some laughed. A few frowned, annoyed by her persistence. John stayed close, ready to step in if anyone grew cruel. Each rejection made Lena's eyes dim a little more, but she did not stop. Her mother's words were carved deep inside her, stronger than her fear. John noticed something unusual. Whenever Lena touched a human's hand, she stared at them with strange intensity, as if she could feel something hidden. It was not random. She was searching for a connection. At one stall, a rough merchant pulled his arm away angrily. "Keep that alien brat away from me," he shouted. People turned to look. Some whispered, others shook their heads. John quickly stepped forward, placing himself between the man and the girl. "She's just a child," John said firmly. "Then keep her out of the way," the merchant snapped. Lena pressed against John's side, frightened. Her little voice trembled. "Are you my daddy?" John's chest ached. Each time she asked that question, it cut deeper. He knew he was not her father, yet her hope made it harder to say no. They moved on. By afternoon, Lena's steps grew slow. Her thin legs trembled with exhaustion, but she did not want to stop. She kept searching, asking every human she saw. Finally, John guided her to a bench near the fountain. "Rest here," he said. She looked up at him, eyes full of quiet strength. "If I stop, maybe I will never find him." John sat beside her, watching the busy street. He understood her desperation, but he also saw the truth. This search was breaking her little body. "Lena," he said gently, "sometimes finding someone takes more than asking strangers. Sometimes it takes time." She tilted her head. "But what if he is out there now? What if he walks past me and I don't ask?" John had no answer. Her logic was simple, but powerful. He could only sigh and place his hand on her small shoulder. She leaned into him, comforted by his presence. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in orange light. Traders packed their goods, and shadows stretched long across the street. Suddenly, a group of armored aliens entered the square. Their helmets gleamed, their weapons at their sides. They moved with purpose, scanning the crowd. Lena stiffened beside John. Fear flashed in her silver eyes. "Who are they?" John asked in a low voice. Her lips trembled. "Hunters," she whispered. "They are looking for me." John's heart raced. He finally understood her search was not only desperate, it was dangerous. Every question she asked, every human she touched, had been under the watchful eyes of enemies. As the hunters spread out, asking townsfolk questions. One pointed in their direction. John knew in that moment, this child's journey for her father was far from simple. And if he did not protect her, she would never live long enough to find the truth. He rose quickly, pulling Lena close. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The girl gripped his coat tightly, her small body shaking. And for the first time since she asked her strange question, John felt an answer forming not from his lips, but from his heart. Shelter in the storm. The moment John saw the armored hunters spreading through the market, his instincts screamed at him to move. They were tall, broad aliens with dark skin plated like stone. Their helmets covered their eyes, but their voices were cold, sharp, and commanding. They spoke to every shopkeeper, pointing at humans, asking questions, scanning the crowd. Lena's little hand trembled as it gripped John's coat. Her silver eyes widened with terror. "They will take me," she whispered. "If they find me, I will not escape again." John bent down and whispered firmly, "Stay quiet. Stay close." He led her into a side street, away from the open square. The sound of heavy boots echoed behind them, but the narrow alley twisted like a maze. John's steps were quick, steady, but his heart was pounding. He was no soldier, no fighter, but he could not hand over a child, especially not this child. The wind began to rise again. Dust swirled into the alley, cutting their sight. The storm that had passed in the night was returning with force. The colony was built on desert land, and storms came fast, drowning streets in sand and noise. People rushed to close windows and drag covers over stalls. John pulled Lena under the shade of an abandoned shelter. Wooden boards rattled against the walls, and broken glass crunched beneath his boots. Lena pressed against him, her breath sharp and frightened. The hunters' voices grew louder behind them. She was seen here. Small one, silver eyes. Bring her out. Do not let the human escape with her. John clenched his fists. So they already knew he had taken her. Someone must have seen them together. The hunters were closing in. The storm roared louder. Sand lashed their faces, burning their skin. John pulled his coat over Lena's head to shield her. "We have to move," he said. They ran through the storm. The street ahead was nearly invisible, swallowed by thick clouds of dust. Lightning cracked across the sky, flashing against the rooftops. The sound of thunder rolled over the colony like the growl of a giant beast. Lena stumbled, coughing as sand filled her mouth. John lifted her into his arms. She was so light it felt as if he carried only bones and cloth. He shielded her with his body as he pushed forward, Finally, through the storm's chaos, the shape of his cabin appeared. Relief washed over him. He shoved the door open and stumbled inside, closing it tight against the wind. The cabin shook under the force of the storm, but inside, the fire still glowed faintly in the hearth. John lowered Lena onto the chair. She coughed, wiping sand from her eyes. He fetched a cup of water, and she drank eagerly. Her small frame shook with exhaustion. "Why are they after you?" John asked, his voice low but steady. Lena's eyes glistened in the firelight. She hesitated, clutching the blanket tighter around her. Finally she whispered, "Because of who I am." John frowned. "Who are you?" Her voice broke. "I am the daughter of someone they fear. My mother said I must be hidden. She said only my daddy could protect me. That is why I must find him." The words stirred confusion and dread inside John. Who could fear a child so much? And what if her mother's last words had not been a story, but a warning? The cabin walls shook with the storm. Outside, heavy boots crunched through sand. Shadows passed the windows. Hunters, still searching. John blew out the lamp and pulled Lena into the corner, holding her close. The door rattled as if tested by force. John's pulse quickened. He picked up an old hunting rifle from the wall. His hands were steady, though fear twisted in his gut. For minutes, they waited in silence. Only the storm screamed outside, drowning every sound. Then, slowly, the shadows moved away. The boots faded into the storm. John exhaled heavily. He lowered the rifle and looked at Lena. She was shaking, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She whispered the same words again, barely audible. "Are you my daddy?" John's throat tightened. He had no answer, yet her voice pierced him like a blade. Her question was no longer simple, it carried life and death. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I don't know, Lena," he said quietly. "But I will protect you." Her silver eyes stared at him, searching for truth. For the first time, she gave a small nod, as if believing him. The storm raged through the night, but inside the small cabin, a fragile bond began to grow. John knew he had stepped into something dangerous, something far greater than himself. He also knew one thing with certainty, whether or not he was her real father. From this moment on, he could not abandon her. The truth revealed. The storm passed slowly through the night, leaving behind silence and the smell of wet dust. John had not slept. He sat by the fire, the old rifle across his lap, listening for footsteps outside. Every creak of the cabin made him tense. Lena had finally fallen asleep on the small bed, the blanket pulled tightly around her. She looked so fragile, like a small bird with broken wings. Even in her sleep, her lips moved, whispering words too soft for John to catch. He wondered if she was calling out for her mother or for the father she believed she would find. When the first light of morning touched the window, John knew he had to ask the questions that weighed on his mind. He cooked a little porridge, though his supplies were running low, and set a bowl in front of her when she woke. She ate quietly, avoiding his eyes. After a while, John leaned forward. "Lena, you said your mother told you your daddy was human. Did she say anything else?" Lena hesitated. Her silver eyes flickered like a child trying to hold back a secret. She held the spoon tightly, her small hands shaking. "My mother said, 'Humans are different,'" she whispered. "She said humans can love even when the stars hate. She said my daddy would not let me die." John frowned. "But why did she believe your father was human?" Lena's face lowered. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. "Because I am not like the others. Look at me." John studied her carefully. Her skin glowed faint blue under the light, but her eyes, though silver, carried human softness. Her small nose, her fragile hands, even the way she smiled, there was something human in it. She was not fully alien, half human, half something else. A strange unease filled John's chest. Could it be possible? Somewhere, somehow, a human had loved her mother. Or had she been created in some darker way? Before he could ask further, a sound outside cut the silence. Heavy boots. Voices muffled but close. John quickly motioned Lena to hide under the table. He gripped his rifle and moved toward the window. Through a crack, he saw two armored hunters speaking to a villager. The villager pointed toward the edge of town toward John's cabin. "They know," Lena whispered, crawling closer, her body trembling. John's jaw tightened. He could not fight an army. He had to think of something else. He guided her to the back of the cabin and lifted a loose board in the floor. Beneath it was a small storage space where he kept supplies. He cleared it quickly and motioned for her to climb inside. "Stay here. Don't make a sound." Her silver eyes shone with fear. "They will hurt you." John gave her a thin smile. "I've been hurt before. Just trust me." Reluctantly, she slipped into the space, clutching the blanket around her. John replaced the board just as a loud knock shook the door. He opened it slowly, keeping his rifle low but visible. Two hunters stood outside, their armor dusty from the storm. One spoke in a deep, metallic voice. "Human, we search for a child. Small, silver eyes, dangerous. If you see her, you will tell us." John kept his face calm. "I've seen no one. Only the storm." The hunter stepped closer, scanning the cabin with glowing red lenses. "She was here. Do not lie." John's grip on the rifle tightened. He forced a laugh. "You think a child could survive that storm? You're wasting time." For a moment, the hunter seemed ready to push inside. But then, with a low growl, he turned away. "We will search the outer fields. If you shelter her, human, you will share her fate." John closed the door quietly, locking it. He lifted the board, and Lena crawled out, her eyes wide with tears. She threw her arms around him without thinking, clinging tightly. "Why are they calling me dangerous?" she whispered. John held her carefully. He wanted to give her comfort, but he needed the truth. "Tell me everything, Lena, please. I can't protect you if I don't understand." Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she stayed silent. Then finally, her voice came out in a whisper that chilled him. "My mother. She was not just anyone. She was a leader, a queen to my people. But she loved someone she was not allowed to love. A human." John froze. Lena continued, her tears spilling freely now. "That is why they want me gone. They fear me. They fear the blood inside me. Half human, half royal. They fear what I may become." The fire crackled softly, filling the heavy silence. John's heart pounded. If she spoke the truth, she was not only a lost child, she was a child of power. A living secret that could shake both humans and aliens. He looked at her so small, so fragile, yet carrying the weight of two worlds. And once again, she asked the question that broke him. "Are you my daddy?" John swallowed hard. "I don't know, Lena," he said honestly. "But if your father was human, then maybe it could be true." Her eyes searched his face, desperate for hope. "Will you stay with me?" John placed a hand on her head. "Yes, no matter what comes, I will not leave you." At that moment, he knew the truth no longer mattered as much as the choice before him. Whether or not he was her real father, he'd become something more: her protector, her shield against the storm of enemies outside. And that truth was stronger than blood. The hunters' close in the morning sun rose weakly over the desert colony, its light hazy through the dust left by the storm. John's cabin stood quiet on the edge of town, but inside, tension grew heavier with every passing hour. John cleaned his old rifle again and again, though he knew it would be little against the armored hunters. Lena sat by the fire, clutching the blanket he had given her. She looked small and fragile, yet her silver eyes carried fear and determination together. John kept glancing toward the window. He knew the hunters would not give up. They had tasted his lie yesterday, and men like that did not forget. Sure enough, before long, the sound of boots echoed through the dusty street outside. John's heart tightened. A dozen shadows stretched across the sand. The hunters were back, and this time they moved with purpose. Lena looked up at him, her little voice trembling. "They are coming for me, aren't they?" John forced calm into his voice. "Yes, but they will not have you." He peeked through the crack in the window. The hunters split into groups, knocking on doors, questioning villagers. Their leader, taller than the rest, carried a glowing staff at his side. John recognized authority when he saw it. This one was dangerous. The leader's voice carried across the street. "The half-blood child is here. Bring her out, and you will be rewarded. Hide her, and you will suffer her curse." John clenched his fists. He had seen men like this before, using fear to control, spreading lies to cover their cruelty. He looked at Lena. She sat frozen, tears running silently down her cheeks. "Listen to me," John said firmly, crouching before her. "They call you dangerous because they fear you. That means you are stronger than they want you to believe. But you're just a child, Lena. You should not face this alone." She whispered, "Are you my daddy?" John's chest ached. He had no answer still, but he placed a hand on her shoulder. "I am the one standing between you and them. That is enough for now." Suddenly, a heavy knock shook the door. "Open," a voice thundered. The hunters had arrived. John motioned for Lena to hide under the bed. He loaded his rifle quickly, then stood by the door. His heart pounded, but his eyes were steady. The door burst open, slamming against the wall. 3 hunters stormed inside, their armor gleaming. The leader followed, his staff glowing with strange energy. John raised the rifle. "This is my cabin. You're not welcome." The leader sneered. "You protect a creature that does not belong. Hand her over, human, or share her fate." "I told you," John said coldly. "There's no child here." The leader gestured, and one of the hunters began searching the room. He kicked aside the chair, tore down the cloth from the shelves. Another bent to look under the bed. John's breath caught. Lena's small hand clutched the blanket, barely visible in the shadows. Before the hunter could pull her out, John fired. The rifle's blast shook the cabin, and the hunter fell back with a roar. Chaos erupted. The leader raised his staff, and a bolt of energy struck the wall, filling the room with smoke. "Run, Lena!" John shouted. The girl crawled out, eyes wide with terror, but John pushed her toward the back door. He fired again, hitting another hunter. The leader snarled, swinging his staff, and the force threw John against the wall. Pain ripped through his chest, but he forced himself to his feet. Lena screamed. The hunters closed in on her. Adrenaline surged through John. He grabbed the iron poker from the fire and swung it with all his strength, knocking one hunter down. He caught Lena in his arms and kicked open the back door. Sand and dust flew as they stumbled into the open desert. The colony behind them erupted with noise. Villagers shouted, doors slammed shut, and the hunters roared orders to chase them. John ran as fast as his legs could carry him, Lena clinging to his chest. His lungs burned, but he did not stop. Shots of energy lit the ground around them as hunters fired. They reached the edge of the canyon, where sharp rocks offered cover. John ducked behind a boulder, panting. Lena pressed against him, her small body trembling. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They will follow until I'm gone." John looked into her tear-streaked face. In her eyes he saw both fear and a strange strength, something greater than her years. He tightened his grip on the rifle. "Then we won't stop either," he said. "As long as I breathe, they will not take you." In the distance, the hunters spread out, scanning the rocks. Their leader's voice thundered across the canyon. "You cannot run forever, human. She belongs to us." John held Lena close, his mind racing. He had only one rifle, little ammunition, and nowhere safe to hide for long. But he had already made his choice. He would fight. Not because he was her father by blood, but because she needed someone to stand for her. And for the first time in years, John felt his life had a purpose greater than himself. As the hunters closed in, the wind rose again, sweeping through the canyon like the warning of another storm. The fight for Lena's future was only beginning. The test of blood. The canyon air was sharp and dry. John pressed his back against the stone, holding Lena close while his eyes scanned the hunters moving through the dust. They were slow, methodical, sweeping the rocks in wide arcs, certain their prey had no way out. John's chest burned with every breath. His rifle was almost empty, only a handful of shots left. He knew that sooner or later, the hunters would corner them. He looked down at Lena. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the shadows, fear mixing with strange calm. "John," she whispered, "they know who I am. They will not stop." "I know," he said, forcing his voice steady. "But neither will I." Before they could move, a strange hum filled the air. The canyon floor vibrated under their feet. The hunters stopped, raising their weapons in caution. Then, from above the cliffs, a new group of figures appeared, robed aliens, their faces hidden, carrying crystal staffs that pulsed with light. The hunters snarled. "The Order," one hissed. John frowned. He had never heard of them, but the hunters clearly recognized these robed figures. The leader of the Order raised his staff and spoke in a calm, deep voice. "The child must be tested. Bring her to us." John stepped in front of Lena. "Tested? What do you mean?" The robed figure looked at him with glowing eyes. "She is not only your burden, human. She is a key. Her blood will decide if she is a threat or a savior." The hunters grew restless, weapons ready. The leader shouted, "Do not trust them, human. They want her for themselves." John's mind raced. He had no reason to trust either side, but the Order had not attacked yet. The hunters, on the other hand, had tried to tear Lena from his arms since the beginning. "John," Lena whispered, "my mother spoke of them. The keepers of truth," she said. "They would know what I am." John studied her face. "Fear, yes, but also hope." He exhaled slowly. "Then we'll go with them." The Order moved swiftly, surrounding them in a circle of light. The hunters roared, charging forward, but the ground split with a crack as the Order's staff struck the earth. A wave of energy through the hunter's back. John held Lena as they were led through a hidden passage in the rocks. They walked down narrow tunnels lit by glowing crystals until they entered a vast chamber underground. The air here was cooler, almost sacred. Strange carvings glowed on the walls, showing humans and aliens standing side by side. Holding a single flame, Lena stared at the images, her eyes wide. This is what my mother told me about. The old promise. Humans and my people, joined as one. John felt a chill. What did this little girl carry inside her? At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal. A crystal bowl sat upon it, shimmering faintly. The leader of the Order gestured toward it. "Place your hand here, child. The bowl will reveal your blood." Lena looked at John nervously. He crouched to meet her eyes. "It's your choice, Lena. You don't have to do anything you don't want to." Her lips trembled, but then she gave a small nod. "I want to know." She stepped forward and pressed her small hand against the crystal bowl. Light spread instantly, glowing through her veins. Her silver eyes shone brighter, and the chamber filled with a humming sound like a heartbeat. The Order watched in silence. Slowly, words appeared in the air above the bowl, written in glowing script. John could not read them, but he felt their weight. The leader spoke solemnly. "Her blood is mixed. Half alien, royal bloodline of the fallen queen. Half human. Bound to the stars. She carries the legacy of two worlds. John's heart pounded. He had suspected, but hearing it spoken aloud shook him. The leader turned his glowing eyes on John. But there is more. The bowl seeks connection. It reacts to bonds of blood and choice. He gestured. Place your hand on the bowl, human. John hesitated, then stepped forward. He pressed his palm beside Lena's. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light surged again, stronger, brighter. The crystal glowed so fiercely it hurt his eyes. The order gasped. The bond is true. Not only by fate, but by will. Her blood answers to yours. John's knees felt weak. You mean, she's my daughter? The leader's voice was calm, but heavy. By blood? Perhaps not. But by the choice of her spirit and the strength of your heart. Yes. To her, you are her father. Lena turned to him, tears in her glowing eyes. I knew it, she whispered. I knew you were my daddy. John swallowed hard, his throat tight. For the first time, he could not deny her. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, but the peace did not last. A loud crash echoed from the tunnels. The hunters had followed. The leader of the order raised his staff. The test is complete. Now the war begins. Protect the child, father of two worlds. John gripped his rifle, his heart burning with new resolve. He was no longer protecting a stranger. He was fighting for his daughter, and nothing in the galaxy would take her from him now. Father by choice, the hidden chamber trembled as the hunters forced their way into the tunnels. Their roars echoed against the stone walls, mixed with the clanging of armored boots. The glow of their weapons lit the darkness like fire. John stood in front of Lena, rifle clutched tight, his heart steady now. The revelation of the test still echoed in his mind. He might not be her father by blood, but she had chosen him, and he had chosen her. That bond gave him strength, stronger than fear. The leader of the order raised his staff. They come in numbers too great. We will hold them back as long as we can. But the child must live. You must take her out of here, father of two worlds. John nodded. He looked at Lena, who held the blanket close around her shoulders. Her silver eyes glistened with both fear and trust. She whispered, Daddy, don't leave me. He crouched to meet her eyes. I won't, not now, not ever. The first wave of hunters crashed into the chamber. Energy bolts struck the walls, sending sparks flying. The order fought with glowing staffs, light against metal. John pulled Lena behind a stone pillar and fired his rifle, dropping one hunter. But more poured in. Go! Shouted the leader of the order. The path above will take you to the surface. Hurry! John pulled Lena into his arms and ran through the narrow passage the order revealed. The tunnels twisted upward, glowing faintly with ancient carvings. Behind them, the battle raged, the shouts, the clash of energy, the screams of hunters falling, but the hunters were relentless. Their leader's voice thundered through the tunnels. The child is ours. You cannot run, human. John pushed himself harder, lungs burning. At last, they burst into the open air. The sky above was painted with storm clouds, the wind carrying the smell of dust and fire. But freedom was not waiting. A line of hunters stood across the ridge, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, his staff glowing with deadly power. His dark helmet reflected the stormy sky. Enough running, he growled. Give her to me, and I will end your pain quickly. John set Lena down gently behind him. He raised the rifle, though it had only one shot left. His voice was firm. You'll have to kill me first. The leader laughed coldly. That can be arranged. Before the hunters could strike, Lena stepped out from behind John. Her small hands trembled, but her eyes glowed brighter than ever before. The power of her blood test still burned within her veins. She spread her arms wide. Leave him alone. She cried. A wave of silver light exploded from her body, knocking the hunters backward. The ground shook and the storm above roared louder. John shielded his eyes from the brilliance. When it faded, the hunters lay scattered, struggling to rise. The leader snarled, furious. "She cannot control it. She will destroy everything." John stood tall, pulling Lena back into his arms. "No, she's not dangerous. She's just a child. My child. And I will teach her to control it." The leader raised his staff again, charging for a final strike. John lifted his rifle, knowing he had only one shot. He aimed straight at the glowing core of the staff and fired. The blast struck true. The staff shattered in a burst of sparks, and the leader fell to his knees, roaring in rage. The other hunters, seeing their commander defeated and fearing Lena's light, retreated into the storm. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. John lowered the rifle, his chest heaving. He looked down at Lena, who clung tightly to him. Her face was pale, exhausted from the burst of energy, but her eyes were calm. "Daddy," she whispered, "you didn't let them take me." John kissed her forehead gently. "And I never will." The storm clouds slowly parted, revealing a pale sun above. The colony lay in the distance, quiet now, but John knew things would never be the same. Word of Lena's power would spread. More hunters would come. More enemies would rise, but he no longer felt afraid. For the first time in years, he had something worth fighting for. Not a mission, not a ship, not even his own survival, but the life of a child who had chosen him. He lifted Lena into his arms and started, walking toward the horizon. "We'll find a place, Lena, somewhere safe. Somewhere you can grow without fear. And wherever we go, remember this, you don't need to keep asking the question anymore." Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him. "Because I know the answer now," she said softly. John smiled, tears burning in his eyes. "Yes, you do." As they walked away, the last echoes of battle faded behind them. Father and daughter, bound not by blood but by choice, stepped into an uncertain future together. And for John, the word father had never felt more true.